It's a music business cliché that the second album is the difficult one. The truth is that they all are, especially when the singer writes the songs and produces the record as well. The album we're about to hear was the artist's fifth, and it certainly wasn't easy. The year is 1985, and our classic album is the Hounds of Love. The continuous flow of music on a compact disc masks the fact that Hounds of Love and the Ninth Wave were conceived as two quite separate sides to the album.
Yes, they were. I started off writing, I think, Running Up That Hill, Hounds of Love, and then I think probably Dream of Sheep. And once I wrote that, that was it. That was the beginning of what then became the concept. And really, for me, from the beginning, the Ninth Wave was a film. That's how I thought of it. It's the idea of this person being in the water. How they've got there, we don't know, but the idea is that they've been on a ship and they've been washed over the side, so they're alone in this water. Now, I find that horrific imagery, the thought of being completely alone in all this water, and they've got a life jacket on with a little light, so that if anyone should be travelling at night, they'll see the light and know they're there. And they're absolutely terrified, and they're completely alone at the mercy of their imagination, which again I personally find such a terrifying thing, the power of one's own imagination being let loose on something like that. And the idea that they've got it in their head that they mustn't fall asleep, because if you fall asleep when you're in the water, I've heard that you roll over and so you drown, so they're trying to keep themselves awake. Well, at this point, although they didn't want to go to sleep, of course they do. And this is the dream, and it's really meant to be quite nightmarish. And this was all kind of coming together by itself. I didn't have much to do with this. I just sat down and wrote this little tune on the Fairlight with the cello sound, and it sounded very operatic, and I thought, well, great, because it conjured up the image of ice, and it was really simple to record. I mean, we did the whole thing in a day, I guess. Again, it's very lonely. It's terribly lonely. They're all alone on like this frozen lake. And at the end of it, it's the idea of seeing themselves under the ice in the river. So, I mean, we're talking real nightmare stuff here. And at this point, when they say, my God, it's me, it's me under the ice, these sort of visitors come to wake them up, to bring them out of this dream so that they don't drown.
Wake up.
My mother's in there, my father, my brothers Paddy and John, Brian Tench, the guy that mixed the album with us, is in there, Daryl's in there, Robbie Coltrane does one of the voices. It was just trying to get lots of different characters and all the ways that people wake you up. Like, when you sort of fall asleep at your desk at school and the teacher says, couldn't get a helicopter anywhere. And in the end, I asked permission to use the helicopter from the Wall, from the Floyd. This is the best helicopter I'd heard for years. I think it's very interesting, the whole concept of witch hunting and the fear of women's power. In a way, it's very sexist behaviour, and I feel that female intuition and instincts are very strong and are still put down, really. And in this song, this woman is being persecuted by the witch hunter and a whole jury, although she's committed no crime, and they're trying to push her under the water to see if she'll sink or float. Ooh,
The next track on Hounds of Love is Watching You Without Me.
Now, this poor sod has been in the water for hours and been witch hunted and everything. Suddenly they're kind of at home, in spirit, seeing their loved one, sitting there waiting for them to come home. And, watching the clock and obviously very worried about where they are, maybe making phone calls and things. But there's no way that you can actually communicate because they can't see you, they can't hear you. And I I find this really horrific. These are all like my own personal worst nightmares, I guess, put into song. And when we started putting the track together, I had this idea for these backing vocals, you know. And I thought that maybe to disguise them so that, you know, you couldn't actually hear what the backing vocals were saying.
Watching You Without Me. Next is Jig of Life.
At this point in the story, it's the future self of this person coming to visit them, to give them a bit of help here. I mean, it's about time they had a bit of help. So it's their future self saying, look, you know, don't give up, you've got to stay alive, because if you don't stay alive, that means I don't, you know, and I'm alive, I've had kids, I've been through years and years of life, so you have to survive, you mustn't give up. Hello, lady. This was written in Ireland. At one point I did quite a lot of writing in Ireland, lyrically particularly, and again it was a tremendous sort of elemental dose I was getting, you know, all this beautiful countryside and spending a lot of time outside and walking, so it had this tremendous sort of stimulus from the outside. And this was one of the tracks that the Irish musicians that we worked with was featured on. There was a tune that my brother Paddy found, which he said, you've got to hear this, you'll love it, and he was right. He played it to me, and I just thought, you know, this would be fantastic somehow to incorporate here. I put this moment here. I put this moment here. I put this moment over here. That was really the idea, just to sort of pull this person up out of despair. Hello Earth was a very difficult track to write as well, because it was in some ways it was too big for me, you know, and I ended up with this song that had two huge great holes in the choruses where the drums stopped and everything stopped, and people would say to me, what's going to happen in these choruses? And I hadn't got a clue. Song, it was all there, but these huge great holes in the choruses, and I knew I wanted to put something in there, and I'd had this idea to put a vocal piece in there that was like this traditional tune I'd heard used in the film Nosferatu, and really everything I came up with, it was rubbish really compared to what this piece was saying. So we did some research to find out if it was possible to use it, and it was, so that's what we did. We re-recorded the piece, and I kind of made up words that sounded like what I could hear was happening on the original. And suddenly there were these beautiful voices in these choruses that had just been like two black holes. In some ways I thought of it as a lullaby for the earth. And it was the idea of turning the whole thing upside down and looking at it from completely above. You know, I had that image of if you were lying in water at night and you were looking up at the sky all the time. I wonder if you wouldn't get the sense of, as the stars were reflected in the water, you know, a sense of like you could be looking up at water that's reflecting the stars from the sky that you're in. And the idea of them looking down at the earth and seeing these storms forming over America and moving around the globe, and they have this like huge, fantastically overseeing view of everything. Everything is in total perspective, and way, way down there somewhere there's this little dot in the ocean that is them.
The ninth wave song sequence concludes with The Morning Fog.
Well, that's really meant to be the rescue of the whole situation, where now, you know, suddenly out of all this darkness and weight comes light. You know, the weightiness is gone, and here's the morning, and it's meant to feel very positive and bright and uplifting from the very sort of dense darkness of the previous track. And although it doesn't say so, in my mind, this was the song where they were rescued, where they get pulled out of the water. And it's very much a song of seeing perspective, of really, you know, of being so grateful for everything that you have, that you're never grateful of in ordinary life because you just abuse it totally. So, and it was also meant to be one of those kind of thank you and good night songs. You know, the little finale where everyone does a little dance and then the bow and then they leave the stage. I've never been so pleased to finish anything in my life. There were times I never thought it'd be finished. It was just such a lot of work. All of it was so much work. You know, the lyrics, trying to piece the thing together. But I did love it. I did enjoy it. And everyone that worked on the album was wonderful. And it was really, in some ways, I think, the happiest I've been when I've been writing and making an album. And I know there's a big theory that goes round that you must suffer for your art. You know, it's not real art unless you suffer. And I don't believe this, because I think, in some ways, this is the most complete work that I've done. In some ways, it is the best. And I was the happiest that I've been compared to making other albums.
Classic Albums is produced by John Pidgeon. I'm Richard Skinner. Our special thanks to Kate Bush.